Hello, and welcome to Sustainability Marketing Lecture 8 on Communications. This is continuing our look at the sustainability marketing mix as part of the total sustainability marketing process. It's the second of our episodes on marketing communications, and in this episode we're going to be looking at sustainability marketing messages, and then in the final episode we'll be looking at the case study of One Water. There are three outcomes we'll hope to address in terms of this session. The first is appreciating the different types of appeal that sustainability marketers can use to engage their consumers. So looking at really how sustainability marketers try and reach their consumers with marketing communications. The second will hopefully get you familiar with the different types of messages and types of communication campaign that can be effective. And finally, looking at the concept of greenwashing and the way in which sustainability marketers can avoid it. In terms of the structure of the episode, the first part will be looking at getting the message right, looking at different types of sustainability appeals that marketers can use. In the second part, we'll focus on labelling, which is one particular type of medium, but also is very important for getting the message across to consumers. And in the third part, we'll be looking at the dangers of greenwashing. There are several types of sustainability appeals that marketers can use to try and reach their consumers. The first one, and one you'll commonly find used, is financial appeals, particularly where a particular sustainability solution is aiming to save customers money as well as saving resources. So a low energy house, for example, or a fuel efficient car, for example, or a low energy light bulb can be marketed to the consumer not just on the basis of it being good for the planet, but on the basis of it being good for the consumer in terms of saving money. The second type of appeal is a broader type of appeal, the management appeal, in which the company really tries to promote the way in which it does business, to say that we are a very efficient business, for example, we save resources, and to try and make the company appear to be part of the solution in relation to sustainability rather than part of the problem. The third type are euphoria appeals. So many of the words you'll find used in sustainability solutions and their marketing, words like pure, healthy, natural, are really trying to give consumers a good feeling about those particular products and their nature. The fourth type is emotional appeals, and you'll find many marketing communications campaigns from companies working in the sustainability arena have quite a strong emotional aspect. That can be negative in terms of talking about the dangers of climate change, for example, or talking about the problems caused by global poverty, and really trying to motivate consumers in terms of the bad things that may happen if we don't change our consumption behaviours. The other type of emotional message can be quite positive, quite celebratory, for example. So when Honda was developing a campaign for its low emissions diesel engines, they used a very euphoric type of campaign, really, with celebrating the technology with some very kind of fun cartoon advertising as part of TV adverts. And you wouldn't think of a diesel engine as something that's particularly fun or worth celebrating, but they managed to create a very celebratory campaign around their technology. The next type is zeitgeist appeals. That's really trying to link a particular marketing communications campaign into the sort of fashion, the sort of trends of the time. A kind of eco-chic, if you like, appeal to marketing communications. There are also a variety of other types of campaign and message that can be used. Celebrity endorsement, for example, is a very popular type of appeal. And again, it's very important with that to choose the right celebrity who is a credible spokesperson for a particular brand. The key to whichever type of appeal you use is really to make sure that the message connects with the values of the customer, the things that they think are important, the issues that they associate with the brand. So it's very much about making those appropriate connections. There are many different recipes that have been proposed by different commentators about how to create an effective sustainability marketing communications campaign, and particularly how to get the message right. I've chosen one to present to you here. It's a sort of 10-point set of rules prepared by Futerra the marketing communications consultancy who specialise in sustainability marketing communications. And they have 10 rules that they think marketers should follow. The first is to make your campaign part of the big picture. So connect your particular sustainability solutions with those global issues. Show that it's part of a long-term solution, that you're not just following maybe the latest fashion, that it's some long-term thinking on the part of the company, not just bandwagon jumping. And also about blowing myths, that a great deal of myth exists about sustainability solutions, whether they're less convenient than things that customers are used to using, whether they're more expensive, whether they don't really work properly. So very often there are myths that have to be tackled by marketing communicators, as well as just putting across the good parts about their particular solution that they've developed. The second rule is to be technically correct, and we'll talk about greenwashing later on and what happens if you don't get your communication correct in a technical sense. But it's a question of being trustworthy, giving consumers the facts, being very transparent so that customers can really see that the solution you're presenting is a genuine one, is backed up by facts, and that it isn't just sort of empty promises. The third rule is to be cool, and being cool is something that's kind of easier to say than to do very often, but they talk about trying to make sustainability brands sexy, if you like. Make them look like part of the mainstream, not something that's too alternative and too different to what customers are used to dealing with. Not to be patronising, assume that your customers do understand the issues and do want to make sensible choices, but also to be brave, to stand out, to make your brand something different and to make it exciting. The fourth rule is to belong. It's saying that consumers, we know from consumer research, consumers like to belong. They like to be part of something bigger. They don't like to feel they're operating out on their own. So try and show that your brand is part of a sort of worldwide change and that the consumer, by being can be part of that change by buying the particular brand. The fifth rule is the idea that stories work. That although it's important to provide the facts and figures to be technically correct, what often moves and motivates consumers is stories. So perhaps stories about people in other parts of the world who are affected by poverty or by climate change, for example. And that people tend to be empathic, and they do sympathise with the plights of other species, other people, other places, and that you can use stories to engage with people and really get them to change their behaviour, to join in with the solution. And when we look in episode 3 at the case study of One Water, you'll see a video there that really helps to communicate the story of other people in other places and how a particular consumer choice can make a real difference. The sixth rule is optimism. It's saying that really people don't tend to respond as well to negative things. If you talk to somebody about things in a negative way, if you make them feel too guilty, they will very often find a reason to rationalise it away, rationalise why it doesn't really apply to them, why them joining in doesn't maybe make too much of a difference, that guilt tends to give us a reason to withdraw from the conversation. So they recommend being upbeat. Now, we saw earlier on in lecture 4 that there is some issue about this in terms of, curiously enough, in some of the countries where the level of consumer response to sustainability is highest, tends to be in countries where consumers do feel relatively guilty about their consumption and do worry about sustainability issues. And that's something of a conundrum that I think marketing communicators will need to resolve over the coming years. The seventh rule is what Futerra described as the glory button, in terms of saying this is really good, this is something important. Joining in with this makes you part of something that's big and important, and as they put it, being a sustainability marketing consumer makes you a great person and we love you for it. So again, it's more of that positivity, reinforcing the message of that what customers is doing is worthwhile. The eighth rule is that change is for all, that this is not something that's a niche idea. It's not just for certain customers, it's not just for certain brands. It's something really that's for everybody, that can include all types of people, that it's not about the stereotypical middle-class consumer perhaps, but that sustainability solutions really are for everybody. This idea of pushing the solutions into the mass market, the idea of promoting mass ownership of these products, of these ideas by the mass of the market. The ninth rule is we need more heroes. The idea of icons to emulate, that we want our celebrities to live sustainability lifestyles that perhaps we will aspire to and want to copy. that will have inspirational business leaders that other companies will want to follow. So very much about promoting that idea of heroes. And the final one is the idea of personal circle, that it's promoting the personal relevance of some of these issues. Problems like global climate change and global poverty can seem just too big and too global and too far away from many consumers' lives for them to really feel they can make a difference. And this is very much connecting those global issues back to individual consumers' lifestyles, their personal consumption, so that they feel they can actually make a real difference through their own consumer behaviour, through their purchasing and through the way they live their lives and manage their homes, for example. I mentioned in episode 1 of Lecture 8 that we talk more about labelling in this episode. And although labelling is in itself a particular marketing medium, it is particularly important for carrying the message about sustainability solutions to consumers, particularly when they're in store, picking up a product, thinking about it, and making their choice. Labels are important really because they're a very simple way of communicating with consumers. We know they're effective. From the marketing research, we know that consumers can be very strongly influenced in store by what they read on particular labels. They tend to be trusted. Sometimes that trust can be misplaced, as we'll see later on, but when consumers pick up a product and they see a green label, they see a logo on there, they do tend to trust that. There are a variety of different types of label. Some are voluntary, that companies adopt to try and communicate with their consumers messages they would like to put across. There are others that are mandatory, so in terms of ingredients, for example, very often companies have to specify the ingredients in terms of the law. And they can address a wide range of different types of issue. So they might address the way in which the product is made, they may address the ingredients that it contains, the country that it's come from, or some other particular property that the product has. In some cases, it's properties that you're trying to attract the customer to. So if you want to say that a product is organic in its production, or that it's fair trade in terms of the economic system that has delivered it, then you can put a sort of positive message on there. In other cases, it may be talking about things that customers might want to avoid, that a product, for example, hasn't been air freighted to get to the supermarket, or that it doesn't include volatile organic compounds, for example. So labels can both attract consumers about particular things and also warn them about particular things. It's also important to say that verification is very important for labels, that showing that a label is trusted and that the information that's on there has been verified by a third party and therefore can be trusted by consumers is very important. That labelling preferably needs to be by an independent third party. So for example, for Marine Stewardship Council fish that's been certified by them as sustainably sourced, they require a chain of custody statement that's been from an independent and accredited supplier to say that that fish has been sustainably sourced all the way through the supply chain before the retailer can put the label on the store to inform the consumer. There are a range of different types of label. You have European labels, for example, like the EU Eco label. There are national labels, for example, that might address particular countries or regions. So you have the Nordic Eco label, for example. Some labels address only particular types of product. So the rug mark, for example, just relates particularly to carpets. You have some labels that talk about the way in which a product has been made, for example, a certified organic, or in terms of how the product can be treated. So a compostable label, for example, tells you about how a product can be used post-use. A label like fair trade, for example, doesn't tell you exactly about the technical nature of the product, more about how the product has been developed in terms of the labour standards that have been used within the supply chain, and the way in which, in that case, the money that's been paid in terms of the minimum price that has reached suppliers for that product. So labels can cover a whole different range of types of issue, and they can also be applied to a whole different range of types of product. So we're perhaps more familiar with seeing them on fast-moving consumer goods that are sold in a supermarket, so when we're picking up our food or our drink. But increasingly we see labels on consumer durables, on clothes, for example, particularly in terms of organic sourcing of clothes. Electrical goods increasingly have energy efficiency labels on them. As I mentioned, carpets often have the rug mark label on to show that no child labour has been used in their manufacture. And new homes, for example, now tend to come with energy labelling and certification, so you understand the energy efficiency of the house that you're buying. One of the problems with this expansion of the number of types of label and the number of types of product that use labels is we are beginning to reach a situation where some consumers are feeling overloaded by the sheer number of labels that are in front of them in stores and the amount of information they're having to process from those labels. So looking to the future, it may be a question that policymakers and marketers need to address, because we're tending to see new labelling schemes being introduced almost weekly within supermarkets, and we're reaching a point where maybe the consumer can no longer cope and we need to have some form of rationalisation of labelling schemes. Here's one particularly interesting example, I think, from Timberland, who, in developing their boots, they realised there was no very good labelling going on within footwear to say, you know, how a particular product was made, where it came from, what its environmental impacts were. And they came up with the idea of having what they called nutritional labels for boots. So in the same way you'd pick up a food item and there'd be a label telling you what the nutritional value of the particular product you were buying was, they thought, well, why can't you do that for something like a boot to show what the environmental impacts are of the different elements of the boot and how it's produced. And Timberland boots now come with this form of label attached to them, so again, consumers can really understand where that product came from, what it's made from, and what the environmental impacts of that product are. I mentioned at the beginning that we'd have a little look at the concept of greenwashing, and the term greenwashing actually came from the environmental journalist Jay Westervelt, who was staying at a hotel one day, and he noticed a little sign in the hotel bathroom saying, if you'd like to save the planet, please reuse your towels. If you want your towels washed, just drop them in the tub. Otherwise, hang them up. This will save water, save detergent, and help save the planet. And he realised that, although that was a nice thing to do for the hotel, and yes, it would save some energy and some water and some detergent, although incidentally saving the hotel money by doing that, he realised that nothing else within the hotel he was staying in was really sustainability orientated. It was only about washing the towels. That was as far as their sustainability commitment went. So he developed the term greenwashing from that particular incident, and the term has become synonymous with the idea of companies maybe saying really good things about sustainability and what they're doing, but not really backing up those words with meaningful actions. And over the last few years, the marketing communications consultancy TerraChoice have been doing a very widespread assessment of claims that companies make across many countries, including USA, Canada, Australia, and in Europe, looking at thousands of different sustainability products, what promises they make, and trying to find out the extent to which those promises are backed up in reality. And what they came up with is what they called the 7 deadly sins of greenwashing. It began as 6, but a couple of years ago they found a 7th that they added to the list. And the 7 sins that companies need to avoid in order to avoid being accused of greenwashing, the first is what they call hidden trade-offs. So this is where you promote some very good sustainability attribute of your brand, but actually what that does is rather disguise that something else maybe isn't so good. So you might promote a product as being increasingly energy efficient, but it actually also is very poor on hazardous materials. So the overall product isn't necessarily that great, but you're highlighting the bit that is good. The second one is no proof, where you make a claim, but you can't actually prove it. And TerraChoice came up of numerous examples of paper companies, for example, claiming that their paper was made of so much post-consumer waste that had been recycled, but they had no evidence that could back up that particular claim. They just said it, but couldn't actually prove it. The third problem is vagueness, these claims which sound good, but don't really mean anything. Probably the most common one is eco-friendly. People say this product is eco-friendly, but what does eco-friendly mean? It has no real meaning in any sense. It just kind of sounds nice. The fourth one is irrelevance, highlighting something about a product which, again, sounds good, but perhaps doesn't really mean anything very much for that particular product. And A favourite one is aerosol manufacturers, for example, will say our product is CFC free in terms of the aerosol propellant. Now, CFC free has been a legal requirement for the last 20 years in European countries and many other parts of the world. So in some ways it's not really a meaningful claim, because you're saying this product doesn't contain a substance that would be illegal if it was in there and hasn't been included for nearly 20 years. Now, I would say an interesting point is that in their defence, the aerosol manufacturers point out that consumers still mistakenly often believe that aerosols do contain CFCs. So there is some justification for what they're doing. But there are various other examples of people claiming particular benefits for their company, which just isn't, for their product, which isn't really relevant to the product under consideration. The fifth one is fibbing, or lying, as it's known, where you just say something about a product that is just completely not true. And there are various exposés that have been done within the media, for example, of people selling products like eggs that were claimed to be organic or free range, when in fact they were just ordinary battery-produced eggs. There was nothing of the case, it was just a pure lie. And unfortunately there are, every now and again, stories in the media showing companies that have just basically lied about their products. And the seventh one in the sins is the sin of worshipping false labels. And amazingly enough, TerraChoice found 31% of products that they examined gave a false impression through the labelling that that product had been accredited independently for its sustainability credentials. So some labels were worse than others, but 31% gave some degree of false impression, and I think that's a very worrying amount of false labelling out there. And TerraChoice even found this particular label available on the internet. You can buy it for $15 to apply it to your product, and it says certified green, environmentally conscious, and it's just a label attached to absolutely nothing. So again, I think for sustainability marketers, it's very important to ensure that there is verification behind the labels, that they're independently accredited by an independent third party to really give those labels veracity and to help consumers to trust what they actually see on the supermarket shelves. One of the things that TerraChoice did find was that the number of products making green claims was actually growing. It's something, this has gone up and down over the years. So in the late 1980s, for example, there was a surge in availability of products that were claiming some form of green attribute. That declined a bit in the early 1990s, but has since risen again. And they found between 2009 and 2010, a great deal more products on the shelves making some form of claim to sustainability attributes. They did, however, find that amongst those products, 95% had committed at least one of those sins. Not necessarily all of them, and very often most of the communication on a particular product or package or advert would be correct. But nearly all companies were making some mistakes somewhere along the way. So it just goes to show that it can be quite difficult to get your sustainability marketing communications absolutely accurate, absolutely trustworthy. What was promising, perhaps, is the number of products, or the proportion, I should say, of products that were completely sin-free, whose marketing communications was absolutely accurate, had doubled between 2009 and the 2010 survey to almost 5% of products were completely sin-free, completely accurate in all their marketing communications. So we could say at least proportionally that claim accuracy does seem to be improving. So being accurate in your communications, make sure you avoid all those sins of greenwashing and those traps of not quite getting your information correct, is one set of challenges for marketing communications campaigns and for sustainability marketers to get right. There are other challenges, though, that need to be met. The first is the idea of trying to communicate what are very large, complex issues, for example. Trying to discuss everything about how a product is made, where its ingredients are sourced from, what the social and environmental impacts of that product and its production might have been, how the consumer perhaps has to deal with it when it comes to recycling. That's a great deal of information, and trying to put that information on often relatively small labels or into an advertising slot that might last only 30 seconds on TV or radio is really very difficult. One of the ironies is that in terms of companies trying to reduce their packaging to improve their sustainability performance and save resources, that actually makes packages smaller in terms of communicating the information in terms of labeling. So it's ironic that you're getting more and more information that you're trying to put across using a package that is getting smaller and smaller. The other problem very often that companies face is that there's a balancing act in terms of the emotion with sustainability marketing communications. We know the issues are very serious. Climate change, ecosystem degradation, enduring global poverty, these are all very serious issues, and in some ways there's a temptation to try and motivate consumers by showing how serious these issues, trying to get them to take them seriously. At the same time, we know from the research that most consumers in consumer economies, they don't really want to be depressed, they want to be entertained. And that can make it very difficult for companies to get the right balance. And some companies who've developed some very innovative and sometimes amusing and engaging marketing communications campaigns to reach consumers have found themselves accused of trivializing the issues, of not taking serious sustainability issues sufficiently seriously. So again, it's a very difficult balancing act for companies to try and address. One of the ways I think of addressing both is maybe to use online media effectively, because even though your space on your label to get the information across may be small, your website can offer you an almost infinite amount of space to try and develop those issues and put across that information. Again, if you want to entertain a consumer and draw them in using a media ad, for example, then you can cover the more serious issues on the website, saying how the products and their production and how they're consumed links back to those sustainability issues and make a positive contribution. That can be done in more detail and with more seriousness on the website as well. So online communication being used effectively does offer one way of addressing some of those challenges. But again, online communication itself does involve a number of challenges. Often online communication can be somewhat hijacked, and we have examples, for example, of people who are climate change deniers coming up with quite organised campaigns to post messages on company websites who are trying to make a contribution towards climate change, for example. You can see particular debates and things online being manipulated online. And we've also seen the phenomenon recently of astroturfing, of companies and other organisations inventing things like Facebook profiles in order to be able to post recommendations and feedback from consumers who don't even exist. And although we think of the online environment as very open, very democratic, a very maybe an honest way for customers to have their voices heard, again, we're starting to see some worrying trends about the way in which it's used, which maybe does threaten the ability of companies to get their message across to their consumers clearly. So that's been a basic exploration of some of the issues involved in trying to get the message across to your consumer and to other stakeholders about the sustainability solutions that you've developed as a marketer. So the questions you might want to think about in terms of reviewing this session: the first are the different types of appeal that companies can use to try and engage with their consumers and develop messages. The second are about those sins of greenwashing, so reviewing what those different types of sins are and thinking about what sustainability marketers can do to try and avoid committing any of those sins. And the third one is thinking about, well, why some of those marketing communications activities might be particularly difficult for sustainability marketers, perhaps compared to their conventional counterparts. In terms of the references to back up the session we've just had, obviously Chapter 8 of our book, Sustainability Marketing, will cover a great deal of those communications issues about developing effective messages in greater depth. The paper by Jacqueline Ottman and colleagues on green marketing myopia, published in the journal Environment, is a useful one because it particularly looks at how companies have developed their messages and made sure they connect those messages very effectively with the concerns and the sustainability values of their consumers using different types of campaign and different types of message and media. And the final one is the most recent, the 2010 TerraChoice Greenwashing report, looking at the veracity of those marketing communications claims across a wide range of countries, and what companies can do to try and make sure that their communications is honest, truthful, and ultimately trusted. So, thank you very much for listening to this session, and bye for now.